Шановні колеги, ми
Esteemed colleagues, we continue our working day in UCMC. I invite the first deputy head of the SMM of OSCE, Mr. Alexander Hack.
Good afternoon. Dear friends, all too often I stand here and speak about violence, death and destruction. This has been the story of Donbass for over 2 years now. This week, however, I have some cause for cautious hopefulness. While talks in Berlin proved inconclusive, there were some good ideas on the table that had broad ministerial backing. These need to be elaborated now in Minsk and worked on jointly by the SMM and the Joint Center for Control and Coordination. I take hope, however, in seeing that all involved agree that something needs to be done to make the ceasefire sustainable. Ultimately, I think there has been a realization that realities on the ground will not be decided by the use of violence. Only through negotiations by all involved can positive change be made. Last week, the SMM recorded a decrease in the number of ceasefire violations. Counting violence is always tricky, and our figures may represent just the downward side of the nominal ebb and flow of violence we have been seeing for months. The only real constant here is unpredictability. Despite the relative calm at the surface, the risk factors remain. The sides have moved dangerously close to one another in a number of locations and have not reverted this process. And we all know where this leads to, as we saw in Olenivka 2 weeks ago. The sides have moved heavy weapons out of holding sites. The sides have positioned heavy weapons in the security zone. Vast areas of the security zone remain infested with mines and unexploded ordnance. Since 2 years, the SMM documents these facts. And these facts are the recipe for more fighting and casualties if these risks are not removed. The figures do, however, provide some hope. They also provide an opportunity for the sides. Different cycles of violence are hard to break. So any relative calm needs to be seized upon. And there is now an opportunity to introduce measures to enable a sustainable ceasefire. The sides must take this opportunity now. In some places, however, the situation remains particularly worrying. For people living in areas south and southeast of government-controlled Svetlodarsk, tentative progress made nearly 2,000 kilometers away in Berlin must seem very remote. Every evening and every night our monitors there have been recording worryingly high numbers of explosions and signs of fighting. On Tuesday evening, for instance, while in the town, they heard one explosion assessed as an incoming mortar round, 22 bursts of heavy machine gun fire, 8 bursts of automatic grenade launch fire, over 50 bursts of small arms fire, 16 shots of BMP-1 cannon fire, and 38 bursts of anti-aircraft gunfire, all just about half a kilometer southeast of their position. The other main hotspot is the Yasinovatha-Avdiivka area, just north of Donetsk city. On Tuesday night, while in government-controlled Avdiivka, our monitors in just half an hour heard 4 undetermined explosions and some bursts of heavy machine gun and small arms fire, and saw 1 airburst, all about 5 kilometers east of their position. In nearby so-called DPR-controlled Yasinovatha, the following day, they heard 7 shots of small arms fire and saw 2 airbursts of anti-aircraft gunfire 2 to 5 kilometers west of their position. As well as violence in the security zone, we also have been observing many proscribed weapons there. The SMM long-range unmanned aerial vehicle, for instance, spotted an anti-tank gun in government-controlled Luhansk near Svetlodorsk. Aerial surveillance imagery available to the SMM revealed the presence of 4 tanks in so-called DPR-controlled Donetsk city. All are in violation of the respective withdrawal lines. All are in breach of the Minsk agreement. And dear friends, they are just a fraction of the total numbers of weapons in the security zone. When we talk about violations, ceasefires, and withdrawal lines, it's easy to forget that this conflict is ultimately about people suffering hardship and facing danger. People in government-controlled Orikhove in western Luhansk region, for instance, are afraid to go to work their land because of the risk from mines and unexploded ordnance. There are no mine warning signs and demining has not taken place there. Residents of government-controlled Malinove, some 20 kilometers northeast of Luhansk, have problems accessing healthcare and even food, as routes traditionally used have been closed due to security reasons. And elderly people living in so-called DPR-controlled Krulik on the Donetsk-Luhansk regional boundary line get neither pensions nor humanitarian assistance. The most vulnerable people are left to take care of themselves. And we should not forget the plight of those who have left such areas and are spread out all across Ukraine and further afield. As of 10 May, according to the Ministry of Social Policy figures, there are 1.78 million internal displaced persons in the country. They often face challenges finding employment and housing in competition with settled communities who are already struggling in a difficult economic situation. Many internal displaced persons face an additional challenge. Many have had their social and pension payments suspended until their residential address is verified. All governments have the right and indeed an obligation to fight fraud, but measures need to be transparent and those affected need to be notified. In Mariupol, 14 IDPs told us that they had only discovered that their benefits had been suspended when attempting to withdraw them from the bank. Dear friends, separately, our monitors this week have faced restrictions on their movement, harassment, intimidation, and threats. In one instance, a so-called DPR member pointed a weapon at an SMM patrol as it passed through Lukove, some 41 kilometers northeast of Mariupol. Inflammatory and unfounded public remarks by certain so-called DPR leaders, which they have failed to substantiate, make the security of our monitors even more precarious. The SMM is an unarmed monitoring mission. We are not party to this conflict. We do not take sides. We do in fact have the political backing of all 57 OSCE participating states, representing every conceivable position and view in relation to this conflict. Our only objective is to bring this conflict to an end. Targeting our monitors, whether in the streets of Debaltseve or from a microphone in Donetsk, is therefore delaying the day when the people of Donbass can once again live free of fear and violence. Those internal displaced persons wishing to return home will also not forgive such behavior. As usual, at the end of my statement here, I would like to inform you about the latest mission numbers. As of today, the mission has 705 monitors, of whom 585 are deployed in the east. In addition, there are 301 national staff and 82 other international staff working for the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hoog. Are there any questions, please? Якщо є запитання, будь ласка, представляйтесь і, власне, запитуйте.
Sayan Kotali, Union. I would like to ask you in English this question. You already mentioned about Berlin Normandy talks recently, and according to this, can you specify what's your expectation from the next trilateral contact group meeting in Minsk, and exactly what OSCE can do in order to facilitate or to make something done in progress, I mean. And also, can you please, do you have any comments on the Ukrainian initiatives to change your mandate or to deploy another mission that would be armed mission in order to support security on contact line and also on the border with Russia. Do you have any comment on this initiatives? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. I can't speak on behalf of the 4 ministers, nor can I speak on behalf of the government of Ukraine. But what I can do is explain what we are mandated to do here in Ukraine. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission is an unarmed civilian observer mission with 2 main tasks. One is to observe and to report, and another is to conduct dialogues on the ground to further bring about normalization. Now, with the ideas that have been discussed in Berlin, including that of disengagement, the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission will use these 2 pillars of its mandate to support these ideas. We will do so in Minsk, and we'll do so in Solidar at the headquarters with the Joint Center for Control and Coordination. What concerns the discussions about possible deployment of another mission, this is a question that the participating states of the OSCE will have to answer. Any such decision requires a consensus decision by all 57 participating states of the OSCE. And I repeat again, the SMM, the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission, is an unarmed civilian observer mission. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, hi, Tom from the BBC. I'd just like to ask you whether you think that we're kind of reaching a critical juncture. You know, post-Berlin, reports in the German media give a sense that politicians at a senior European level are kind of losing patience with both sides. And do you sort of have any cause for optimism that actually political progress can be made? I mean, there are signs that maybe there could be a sort of decrease in the level of violence, but do you actually see any signs that there are any concessions in political terms on both sides? And just to follow up my colleague's question, I mean, has the OSCE been party to discussions about an unarmed mission in the future or not?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the 2 questions there. With regard to the second one, the discussion of a possible additional mission or wing will have to be conducted among the 57 participating states, and it will not be conducted here in Kiev with the SMM. The SMM is a field operation of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. It has been brought to Ukraine by a consensus decision of all 57 participating states. These states have just extended their political endorsement for this unarmed civilian observer mission and have done so until March 2017. Any changes to that mandate or any additional mandate would require a consensus decision by all 57 participating states, and that decision and discussion will have to be led out of Vienna, where the Permanent Council, the structure sits, where all 57 participate. Now, with regard to Berlin, indeed, as I have mentioned in the beginning of my statement, we are cautiously hopeful now that the reality on the ground suggests that there is will to hold up and uphold the ceasefire. It is very positive to see that both sides are in fact able to give down orders to hold the fire comparatively better than we have seen it before. However, beyond that and behind these numbers, of course, remain those risks that need to now to be removed. These are the heavy weapons in the security zone. These are the trenches that are too close to each other. These are the closed passages across the contact line that are obstacles for the civilians. And these are the mines and unexploded ordnance that are littering this security zone, which is supposed to be a zone without danger. Now, these obstacles require further political guidance to those in control on the ground so that these obstacles can be removed. The mission will continue to provide objective information to those who need to take this decision. And in fact, the mission has done so in the past 2 years and will continue to do so on a daily basis, and makes that information publicly available, in addition that it sends it to all 57 participating states on a daily basis.
Thank you, Mr. Hoog. And the last question from Громадське TV. They couldn't make it to come here, so I'm forwarding their question in Ukrainian, if you don't mind. I'll be quoting. У Мінську
In Minsk, they discussed that during the elections in Donbass, there might be present a police mission of OSCE. What will be this mission? How many people will they be? Will it be armed or not? And what will be the functions of this mission?
Thank you. It is indeed the case that Minsk is discussing the question of election. However, the deployment of an armed mission is a question that the participating states of the OSCE would have to answer. There needs to be a decision on this, and the decision needs to be endorsed by a consensus decision by all 57 participating states, and that would include answers to the questions that you have just been provided, but those need to be elaborated, discussed, planned, and then decided upon by the participating states.
Thank you, Mr. Hoog. At this point, we finished the press conference. Thank you for coming, and looking forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
Шановні друзі, на цьому робочий день в Українському кризовому медіа-центрі завершено. Завтра